Let's try this again. Where's Neve Gallus?
Here's my backstory. I'm not a lore nerd. I didn't play Origins or DA2, but I did play Inquisition. So this video essay is a casual fan's take, given that I went into Veilguard with questions like, what's a Tevinter? And after completing it, I was left wondering how many times Solus had lied to me personally. Let me briefly tell you about my time with Inquisition first. I had no intention of buying that game, and the franchise had never even been on my radar. In terms of RPGs, I had played mostly Japanese ones, like Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X-2, Final Fantasy XIII. Well, you get the idea. Dragon Age Inquisition came packaged in with my PS4 alongside Bloodborne, funnily enough, so whoever designed this bundle clearly wanted me to branch out of my comfort zone, and I'm grateful to them. I gave Inquisition a fair chance, my first PS4 game, first Western fantasy RPG, and I was enthralled by the graphics at the time. The character design, the voice acting, animation, and the spells. The gameplay, however, took some getting used to, as it simply wasn't a style I'd encountered much before. I went off the main path very quickly and got destroyed by a couple of level 10 goblins. Not my finest hour, I admit, but I persevered, and it paid off after a bit of grinding and getting used to the gameplay loop. Gradually, I started understanding that I was meant to pay close attention to the story scenes, as the exposition was expertly weaved into the dialogue. I even read some of the additional text lore out of interest. Then I realized there was a romance system, and Josephine was my choice. Josephine with the sharp mind and even sharper pen with which she handled diplomacy for my Inquisition. I will always be yours. The other characters that stood out were Vivienne and Varric. Vivienne for how strong-willed she was, and Varric because, well, Varric is just a cool guy to be around. Solus came across a little too quiet, almost wimpy, and afraid of taking risks. Of course, that impression didn't last. By the end of the game, Solus reveals his true self and his true intentions, setting up the events of Veilguard. 10 long years later, I had forgotten most of Inquisition, but I did remember Josephine, my first love, and that Solus did a heel turn. With that in mind, I launched myself into Veilguard, assuming Solus would either save the world or destroy it. Turns out it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B. I had a delightful time creating an attractive character that looks nothing like me, given that I've always failed at recreating my chiseled likeness in a digital form. Not enough teraflops, I suppose. Anyway, this is who I came up with. My Rook. Tall, muscular, with some light scarring matching her backstory in the Shadow Dragons. I had no prior knowledge of potential companions and of the factions before playing, so my choice of a Shadow Dragon backstory and rogue character was purely based on the fact that they fought against oppression and sought to defend the working class of their city, Miranthus. Miranthus. So imagine my delight when I met Neve, a fellow Shadow Dragon, but let's save that for later. The opening of the game is simultaneously a graphical showcase and a combat tutorial. I learned light and heavy attacks, how to break armor, jump attacks and special attacks. The enemies were small in number, but given my low level, they were enough of a challenge to make the fights last long enough for me to practice my rogue skills. It was really quite accessible, and I think even someone new to the genre will take to it like a fish to water. I found the opening to be excellently directed, Varric being my bridge between Inquisition and Veilguard, Solus being the immediate threat, the monsters coming from the sky, the veil seemingly about to burst. It felt like the crescendo of a game rather than the start, but it worked very well in conveying the stakes of the story that is being set up here. There's even a little dialogue choice early on that can impact whether you use violence in a scene or just talk your way out of trouble. This little scene was the most deceptive of the game though, as future choices, except big story ones, didn't have as much impact on the outcome of the scenes. At the end of the opening, your companions, including Varric, are severely injured. Solus's ritual is stopped, but he's still alive, locked in purgatory. You get to speak with him, question his motives while he prods at your character. You get to move around your base of operations, the lighthouse, a beautifully designed level in itself with its own secrets to uncover in its nooks and crannies, and the future home of all the companions you are yet to meet. I check in on Neve, who still bears scars from the battle I sent her in. We have history, both being shadow dragons. I feel for her and see the immediate impact of my prior decisions. I hope she can forgive me. The music is as you'd expect from a fantasy setting, but don't mistake that for it being bland. The music fits each area, battle and conversation scene appropriately. It does well in accentuating emotional moments for the cast and building up the tension before you get to a dragon or other boss fight. The UI is straightforward and well organized, especially given the amount of options and sub-options under each character. Skill tree and gear, the developers have done a great job in putting together an interface that moves fast and is descriptive. My only nitpick is that leaving the interface takes a second too long to return you to the game in progress, but it's not that noticeable as you don't get into the menu that often, maybe once or twice an hour for me. The tone of the game is quite serious, similar to Inquisition. Don't be fooled by the slightly more cartoonish art style this time. This still isn't Fortnite. There is no slapstick, no overt humour. It's mostly subtle and can be quite talky, occasionally lacking a bit of an edge though. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this video, please click like or subscribe. The combat in this game is more fast-paced and action-oriented than previous entries. It's not quite a hack and slash, even with my rogue character, but it does move at a brisk pace. Even the special abilities don't lock you in an animation for too long. You can execute one and immediately dodge or give a command to your squad mates while you're mid-combat, and it all just works. I encountered no stuttering or bugs while engaged in fights. Your companions, even if they're leveled up, don't quite destroy the opposing forces like you'd expect. The bulk of the combat is still for you to deal with, but your companions do a good job at keeping the attention off you so that you may focus on specific enemies. My loadout was pretty simple. 2 swords, a bow and a few trinkets, and whatever high defense armor I could find. I didn't experiment much with the equipment, however the skills are a different story. I tried a few things at first before settling on 3 abilities, where 2 worked well for crowds and my sort of superpower worked best on a single enemy. And I stuck with that for most of the game. It's only in the third part of the game, close to the end, that I switched all my abilities to crowd control abilities as the enemies got more numerous and challenging. Executing abilities felt quite satisfying, especially in conjunction with my companions' abilities. However, I must admit that I didn't spend much time admiring what they were doing and just focused on the enemies in front of me. Exploration is a mix of walking, running, and light parkour. There are a handful of platforming puzzles where you do have to use items or move beams of light to open up new passages or bridges, and occasionally you have to shoot red diamonds to unlock doors and shoot the rotting red pustules to open passages, but you get used to those pretty quickly. And they're not too hard to execute while also combating enemies or even a boss, as the bow's auto-aim is pretty forgiving. Loot is plentiful, but not overwhelming like in Borderlands 3, for example. Most combat encounters will net you some gold or items. You can also open chests for rare armor and weapons, and some of the side quests come with related weapons and armor sets. None of it is too difficult to obtain or upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, you can use a magical armorer at the lighthouse or faction-related merchants within their respective regions in order to buy or upgrade armor, or even to buy cosmetics, all using in-game currency. Thankfully, no microtransactions here. To get access to the best gear of each faction, you do need to level up your affinity with that faction by completing side quests for them. Those often tie in with your companions and are fun to do. None of it feels too onerous, and the upgrades or upgrade materials are dished out at a relatively good pace to match your progression throughout the game. You know it's a Dragon Age game when the loot's either slightly better boots or a sword with 5 paragraphs of backstory. Given the complexity of the systems at work here, they do all seem to gel very well in a polished way. I haven't encountered any jank in my 70+ hour playthrough. Oh, and just a little tip, if you have 3D audio capable headphones, please use them. The surround sound mix of this game is simply delightful and truly reels you into the world much better than TV speakers ever could.
Hey.
The companions have been a big talking point pre-release, especially Tash, so why don't we start with them and get that out of the way. Tash is Kunari born but raised in Ravane. The lore of both of these cultures are deep and complex. I found Tash's character annoying and brash to start with, but during one of their companion quests, it suddenly clicked. Tash's story is that of a second-generation immigrant. Think about a British child born to Pakistani parents or an American child born to Nigerian parents. Tash's mother took them to Ravane in order to provide them with a better life and better opportunities. They are a third culture child. Once I had that realization, Tash's character started making a lot more sense to me. Add to that, the character is quite young when we meet them, and if I'm not mistaken, Tash is probably autistic, like me. That explains why Tash wanted things to be done in a certain way, communicated in a certain way, and saw things in black and white to start with, like when they had a disagreement with Emmerich about how he uses corpses. Tash didn't know how to express this politely, and simply said that this is wrong and I disagree with it. Granted, it took me a couple dozen hours and getting towards the end of Tash's companion quest to understand this, but it really does explain a lot about their character. The non-binary aspect of the character appeared to be a facsimile for the third culture kid. The immigrant experience, not knowing which group you belong to, which group you're supposed to emulate, and being confused about your own identity, which is something I can very much relate to.
Okay. Sorry I called you a liker. Skull liker.
I asked you, viewer or listener, to please put aside all you've read and heard so far about Tash and go in with an open mind, because this character will surprise you with how much heart they have. Tash started out as the loud kid in the group project, but ended up giving us one of the most emotionally grounded arcs. You get to see Tash grow up before your very eyes.
And what sort of host would I be if we didn't end with some light refreshment?
Let's move on to Emmerich. At first, I wasn't impressed by him. I was like, why is there an old British guy in my crew now? Another magic user. But his story is much more complex than that. He deals primarily in necromancy and has studied it throughout his lifetime, among other students who he befriended. I won't spoil his backstory here, as it is best revealed gradually through his quests. Instead, let's focus on his sidekick, Manfred. Manfred is effectively a skeleton revived by using an inquisitive wisp. He is wholesome, funny, and dedicated to helping his friend and his new team. He has a large part to play in Emmerich's companion quest involving big decisions, and he's better than you at rock, paper, scissors most of the time. Emmerich started out as a boring character, but his character quest, revealing his backstory and especially the scene in the cemetery, very much endeared him to me. If sarcasm could be bottled and sold into Winter, Emmerich would already have a brand deal.
Back in Ferelden, we call this cheese the revered mother's knickers, because that's what it's supposed to smell like.
Harding, better known as Lace Harding, is our resident dwarf. She is by far the most wholesome character of the bunch. Strong, experienced, great with a bow and arrows, and she likes cheese, just like I do. Lace's design substantially differs from Inquisition, but dare I say I do like the new look better. I did not spend much time with her in Inquisition, but in Veilguard I took her along on quite a few missions. Her abilities always come in handy during encounters, and her dialogue was nearly always uplifting. Harding's side quest takes us deeper into the history of the dwarves and help us unlock a deeper power that becomes relevant later in the main story. It also gives us a view into the darker, edgier side of Harding before quickly reverting her back to her lovely self. Harding blames herself for not seeing through Solas's deception, and while that has hardened her character, she is still a hopeful person, and from what I've read, she also makes for a great love interest. Lace Harding is the human embodiment of a warm cup of tea. She always has your back, probably knits her own socks, and would absolutely help you move house without asking questions. I trust her more than I do my real-life friends.
Wonder what else he's hiding.
There are moments in the game, especially just after a big mission, where you, Rook, and all your companions gather in the kitchen or in the reception room of the lighthouse to discuss an upcoming plan or dissect recent events. These scenes are good at showing how different each character is in their perception of events, their goals, the way they feel about your actions and decisions. And thanks to the writing, you really get a sense that this mismatched group is starting to act as a team and care for each other. These scenes also occasionally display some humor, and on one occasion they even make you question the existence and veracity of the Maker, which in Veilguard is basically God. The final thing they do is to give us a chance to delve into the interpersonal conflicts like the one between Davrin and Lucanis.
You're asking if we just disproved the entire Andrastian faith.
Did we?
Lucanis Delamorte, I assume that's Spanish, is a member of the Antivan Crows, a shadowy organization not dissimilar to the Shadow Dragons, but much wealthier, better equipped, and not necessarily benevolent. They are made up of thieves and assassins. Lucanis is the grandson of the local leader of the Crows, and we initially find him dead.
Lucanis Delamorte est mort. Il a été tué il y a 1 an maintenant.
Well, it turns out his death was faked and the body was a dud. So we liberate him from a prison, but he doesn't escape unscathed. He is now tied with a demon spirit called Spite, kind of acting like a dual personality.
Les corbeaux vous saluent.
While I found the Crow's backstory to be interesting, I didn't care much for Lucanis himself due to his dour and angsty demeanour. I did warm up to him later on thanks to his lovely accent and even lovelier affinity to cooking fantastic meals for the team. And his companion questline was full of family intrigue, betrayal and ascension, appropriate for a family of assassins. I strongly suggest you see it through.
Davrin. Doing some renovation?
Lucanis often found himself at odds with Davrin, our resident Grey Warden. Davrin initially appears to be a stoic warrior married to his oath as a Grey Warden, but his softer side shows in his interactions with a young Griffin Asan.
Hi there, boy.
I mean, how could you not love this little guy? We find and sometimes assist Davrin in training Asan, helping find his way as a mentor and protector of the Griffins, while letting Asan also enjoy being what he is, which is a wild animal.
Asan!
Davrin shows a lot of doubt at first in his training of Asan, but really doubt in himself and the responsibility hoisted upon him by the Wardens. As his companion quest progresses, he also starts seeing some of the negative sides of the Grey Wardens and the secrets held within their history, making him question their methods even though he remains steadfast in his mission. If you're anything like me, you'll be hugging Asan every time you walk past him at the lighthouse, and you'll want to help reunite him with his family. Davrin is what happens when a big guy decides being kind is more important than being cool. He's like a golden retriever who accidentally joined the Grey Wardens by following them around.
That isn't, I'm not,
Bellara Lutare is an elven veil jumper. She appears quite naive despite her prior battle experience. She's very interested in elven history, and she spends much of the story reading archives, asking uncomfortable questions, and pushing for answers. She did come across a bit ditzy despite everything going on around her, but over time, and especially in her companion quest, you peel back the layers and learn more about her family, specifically her long-lost brother.
Take away my brother. I'm gonna make you wish you were still a spirit.
I won't go too far into her backstory here and that of the elves, as I don't really understand it, but I will say that I enjoyed her character growth a fair bit. In combat she acts as a support healer, which is a handy ability especially when fighting hordes of undead, and I especially enjoyed her obsession with the mystery stories found in the newspapers, and the fact that she expresses her creativity by writing smutty stories of her own.
A little bit.
Bellara is sparkly, curious, and would absolutely get scammed by a rogue merchant selling magical bathwater.
Oh, I'm sorry if I sent out mixed signals, but I think of you as a friend.
Now, with companions often comes romance. That is a staple of BioWare RPGs, but they have a slightly different take on it here.
Quelle éloquence.
You may have noticed I omitted a character from the previous section. Well, that's because I saved the best for last. Neve Gallus, Shadow Dragon Mage and the only woman to dethrone Josephine from my heart. Neve is present in the opening of the game, accompanying you alongside Harding and Barrick to take on Solus. Given that my rook is also a shadow dragon, that gave them common ground with Neve. Neve got badly injured in the initial chapter, and my concern for her well-being brought me closer to her. I often took Neve on unrelated quests, her ice-based powers freezing enemies, giving me a chance to pummel them or to ingest a potion. Neve's companion arc is directly related to the shadow dragons and to secretive and dark forces operating in Miranthus. We uncover the mystery together, as well as the identity of those involved, and we even get to choose who leads Miranthus in the future. Throughout these adventures, Neve is often pragmatic, always focusing on the little man, protecting those who need it most, as she was once one of them, and from that seemingly never-ending battle comes a level of pessimism that is reflected in her dialogue and interaction with other characters. She can also surprise you in one-to-one scenes where she displays an effortless charm that you just can't help but fall for.
And if you escape, I'll find you again. And every time I do, Minrathus will see someone standing against people like you.
The romance here is played out by selecting the heart dialogue option in conversations with her. It feels quite slow and natural. You don't start out openly flirting at all. You simply show support for her. You encourage her to become an inspiration to the people of her city and to come out of the shadows. And it's only once she makes peace with who she is that she actually opens up to you. It's very much a slow burn romance, which is my favorite kind of romance. It is based on friendship, mutual respect, and lifting each other up. All of this build-up pays off quite late in the game, where Neve admits that you are trouble, and despite her concerns about losing you due to her chosen path, you finally cement your romance with a kiss that you'll wish was real. I've been single a long time, don't judge me. Neve is what happens when you mix academic sass with emotional depth. She's got secrets, she's got layers, and she looks like she reads poetry in the Fade. She's everything I wanted in a romance. Vulnerable, witty, competent, confident, and with just enough trauma to keep things relatable, but not so much that I need to stage an intervention.
Ne t'inquiète pas, je t'aime. Moi aussi, je t'aime. Bon.
If I were to replay Veilguard, I doubt I would romance anyone else. Some of your companions can actually romance each other, or even some NPCs like Emmerich going on a date with Strife and asking for advice, Tash gifting cheese to Harding as an awkward advance. Those little interactions make the characters feel alive, and also gives the sense that the world around you keeps moving while you're out grinding for XP and looking for secrets.
Oh, no. Don't apologize.
The romance here isn't as saucy or in your face as in the Mass Effect games, but feels much more lifelike. The companions are where the story shines, but the main plot isn't anything to sneer at either. After the introduction of the lighthouse and Solus in the Fade, the game truly starts to open up. Your quest takes you to different locations where you end up recruiting companions, discovering a new city and other locations in the process. The early hours of the game, while full of exposition, still moves at a fast pace, teaching you how to play, how to converse, how to combine abilities for combos, how gear works, and how to use skill trees. It does a great job at showing you the ropes in a natural way that fits into the narrative without overloading you with too much information. This part of the game ends on a boss battle with a dragon and a major choice between saving one city over another. A choice that will have deep repercussions on you and your companions for the rest of the game. I believe this choice was well implemented in how it affects the rest of the game world and even dialogue received from NPCs. That must have taken quite a lot of work, and I appreciate the developers for this. I chose to save Miranthus because it appeared to be more populated, and also because it is where my organization, the Shadow Dragons, were operating. I didn't feel good about my choice, and I think that was the point. Sometimes in life there are no perfect choices, you just have to weigh it up and try to live with it. I was quite surprised that this choice was given so early in the game, but it helped set the tone of the story. It already started quite dark, and this gave it even more of an edge. What was missing though is that you didn't see the scenes of a city being destroyed and people being lost. You do see the fallout afterwards when you visit, but I think if they had shown us the brutality of what had happened, rather than telling us about it, it would have had a much bigger impact on the player for the rest of the game. Now later on in the game, I don't recall there being many more high impact choices like this one. Over time though, as you build your bond with your companions, they do start trusting you and respecting your opinion quite a bit, and your words start influencing their decisions in their own personal lives. Within those companion quests, decisions do come up that can have a major impact on them and their sense of self. For example, with Davrin, there is a choice later on about whether to keep his griffin in service of the Grey Wardens or to let them live in the forest where they ostensibly belong. There are choices to do with Emmerich's pursuit of becoming some kind of super necromancer, which can have an impact on Manfred. These choices vary in visible impact, of course, but they do feel consequential to the inner lives of the companions who you would have spent dozens of hours with so far. My only complaint is that the companion quests move relatively slowly, and there being that many companions is wonderful, but it also means it takes quite a while to build up your bond with them in order to move their personal quests along, or at least that's how I think it works. I wish the companion quests were a tad less numerous but meatier. With Neve, you follow her along her investigation into a mysterious group operating in her city, but it moves so slowly that by the time you get to the denouement, you don't quite remember where you started and why you should care about all these other side characters. That being said, the emotional moments did resonate quite strongly with me. Getting to the end of Neve's questline and encouraging her to be an inspiration to the people of her city felt so relatable in the sense that I've had real life friends who needed similar encouragement in the past. And as for Tash, getting to be a part of their inner circle, them trusting me with their turmoil and identity crisis felt real and made me care more about them, and getting to see them take the advice given and putting it into practice with their mother and generally with others was a pretty interesting thing to witness. I take my hat off to the writers for coming up with a good variety of choices that more often than not do feel impactful and resonate with the player. I truly believe that there is something for everyone here if they take the time to get to know the companions. The main story wraps up quite well with minimal teasers for a sequel, unless you find a bunch of secrets, but generally you do feel that the big threat set up in the last game has now been dealt with successfully, and our Rook and their companions can move forward with their lives and hand over to others. If there was to be DLC, I would want it to be location based, as in getting us to visit a whole new area of this world. However, if we're being honest, I would just want a sequel that focuses on a new set of characters and explores other moral conundrums, and perhaps coming of age stories alongside stories about becoming an aging hero, perhaps because the latter is what I would relate to the most, and it is not often seen in gaming. If you've played it recently, tell me in the comments which parts of the story resonated with your own life experience the most. Now let's talk accessibility. BioWare have made some thoughtful choices here, and it shows. First off, the visual options, you've got full screen colorblind filters for Protanopia, Deuteranopia and Tritanopia, so players who experience color differently won't miss out on key information. The HUD is also customizable, meaning you can hide or tweak elements like the minimap, health bar or objective tracker to declutter your screen. And if you're prone to being ambushed because you were admiring the scenery, guilty, the game includes visual threat indicators, a handy little halo shows when you're in melee danger, and directional lines help you spot incoming ranged attacks. You can also pulse the environment to highlight interactable objects, which is great for anyone with low vision, or again for people like me who walk straight past the shiny loot. On the audio front, the Veilguard lets you adjust individual volume sliders for speech, music, effects, the whole lot, so you can fine-tune things to suit your hearing needs. There are also optional audio cues that kick in during actions like locking onto enemies or selecting dialogue, which is a small thing that makes a big difference. Control-wise, full input remapping is here, so whether you're playing with a standard controller, an adaptive setup or something custom, you're covered. Combat itself is also flexible. The game includes 5 difficulty modes, and there's even an unbound option where you can tweak individual elements like enemy health or reaction time to find the sweet spot for your playstyle. You can even adjust the timing windows for parrying or dodging, which is excellent for folks with motor challenges or just anyone who is a bit slow on the reflexes after a long day. Again, guilty. And I have to give props for this last bit. Character creation is deeply inclusive. You can choose your gender identity and pronouns separately, add features like top surgery scars, and the game respects those choices throughout the story. It's not just a cosmetic toggle, it's baked into the roleplay and the world building. Honestly, the Veilguard sets a high bar for accessibility. It's not just ticking boxes, it's clearly been designed so that more players can dive into Thedas and lose themselves in this world without feeling left behind by the systems, and that's something worth shouting about. Before I move on to some final thoughts, if you're enjoying this video or even just the sound of my dulcet tones, please consider liking the video and subscribing so we can reach more like-minded gamers.
I have no pants on. It's distressing.
Yeah, that would be. I haven't had that particular dream.
Upon watching the first trailer, I was like, hey, I remember Dragon Age, I played Inquisition. I should probably play the other games that came out in between so I can catch up on the story. After 3 seconds of googling, I realised it had been a decade since the last Dragon Age, so that piqued my interest. I thought the visuals looked good, but I didn't recognise anyone except Varric and Solus. The game looked dark and brooding, and that's about it. I didn't think much except that I'll maybe play this a year after release when I get round to it, but then came the discourse. Now bear in mind, I didn't watch any recaps before playing, but I did see a handful of articles which created a Streisand effect around a minority of morons with no critical thinking skills, complaining about genders or other things that I don't care about at all. I must admit that while it didn't put me off from playing the game, it did make me cautious given how some recent big budget games like Forspoken did have actual cringe writing.
Did I just do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moved shit with my mind.
When I got to Tasha's scenes, they felt natural. The push-up scene, pulling a bar or whatever, that was indeed cringy, but that was quite literally 20 seconds of cringe versus 70 plus hours of game, so meh. Storm in a teacup, move along. As for my expectations going in, well, as a casual fan of Dragon Age, I felt welcomed by the game. It had a low barrier to entry and plenty of lore items to read if I wanted to read more. It doesn't feel like you need to Google stuff while playing, and you certainly don't need to have played even Inquisition before playing this. The Veilguard does a fantastic job at filling in the backstory and introducing you to this world and its characters in a natural way. So if you haven't played Origins or Dragon Age 2 or even Inquisition, you will still feel at ease in the world of the Veilguard.
There. It's been feeding on the blight.
So after 70 hours of playing the Veilguard, what do I think? Well, I am pleasantly surprised. While the story had its darker moments and some of the early choices hit harder than expected, the emotional weight of the companion quests and the choices you make throughout really stick with you. What stood out to me were the companion narratives. These personal quests were genuinely moving when they hit their emotional peaks. The world building and sense of consequence, especially during big choices, also added a sense of depth. The absence of more high-impact choices after the first few hours also left me wanting more complexity in the moral dilemmas, but these are minor nitpicks in an otherwise solid game. Would I recommend the Veilguard? Absolutely. Casual fans will find a welcoming entry point into the Dragon Age universe, and hardcore fans will enjoy the deeper lore and character-driven narrative. It strikes a good balance, plenty to dive into without feeling like you need an encyclopedic knowledge of the franchise to enjoy it. Would I replay it? Maybe. The story is engaging enough that I could see myself returning and making different decisions. In terms of future improvements, I'd like to see the pacing tightened up for companion quests and a bit more focus on high-impact, world-altering choices. More variety in the secondary narratives would also add richness to the experience. Overall, the Veilguard hits a lot of the right notes. It's a game that makes you care about the people you're traveling with and the world you're trying to save. If you're a fan of narrative-driven RPGs with plenty of lore and dialogue, this one's definitely worth your time. Veilguard is like a magical buffet. Some of it is spicy, some of it's undercooked, but I still went back for seconds. Also, I may now be emotionally bonded to 3 fictional people and 1 sad mage. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Do like and subscribe, and I really do hope that you've enjoyed the game as much as I have. Toodaloo.